Hi, everyone. Welcome to our spiritual sojourn. So happy you're joining us today. Tom, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, Lori. And I see we have a guest today.
We do. My very good friend Douglas Pratt is with us, and he's going to be talking about this wonderful um, thing that he does called Quantum Soul Regression, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit and then share just a snippet of what that's about?
I will give it a shot. Douglas Pratt. In my previous incarnation in this life, I was 40 years as a psychotherapist. I have since retired that role, and now I get to do exactly what I want to do, which is doing these quantum soul regressions that basically is a role as a guide, a spiritual guide and a spiritual healer. And it's a session that, over time has kind of evolved into this session. That's a 2-hour session with the overall intention is twofold. One is to connect you with your spiritual team, your spiritual guide directly. So within the session, the connection is with them, with you. I'm on the side, and you give me the information that you experience. So that is one of the major goals. The other is vis-a-vis this experience that you're able to take it with you so that you have a way to reconnect with your spiritual guide and your spiritual team on your own in your own meditations. So those are the two overall goals for this session. The session basically is based on using guided imagery. It's a nice way to take us into a gentle altered state and move you into what I call a personal sacred space, safe place that's safe, protected, and always full of wisdom. And then we take you to that space, and then the fun starts because this is where I never know how it's going to unfold. And for me, that's great. So then the question I always ask is, are you ready to have your spiritual guide, your spiritual team join you? And then with that, yes, we invite them in. Now, your spiritual guide, your spiritual team, these are beings that have been with you through your lives, and your primary spiritual guide has been with you through all your incarnations, all of your lives. So this being of light knows you extraordinarily well, knows what you've worked on, what you've accomplished, and what you're working on within this life, and particularly where you're at this moment, today, during the session. So and they hold only unconditional love. Sometimes we get into thinking they judge us and judge us harshly. That is not true because all they hold is unconditional love. So what we unfortunately do is we project that onto them, our judgment. So the truth is they don't. And so they step in, and how it unfolds is always very specific to the individual, to you. It's what you need today to help you move along your spiritual path. So what happens today may be very different than what might happen in 6 months, because what you need may be very different then than what you need today. And that's part of why I like them so much, because they're very specific to this moment.
I know that when I've had one of several of these with you, I find that it's hard to remember or hard for me to speak. And I know sometimes you'll prompt, asking a question, but even then, I find it really difficult to somehow be able to say what I'm seeing or feeling or doing in that moment out loud. Do you find others have that same kind of feeling or that same difficulty?
It really ranges. You know, we record the session. It's all set up to be recorded. Um, and so everything is there. So there's no worry about you having to remember it. It's there. In terms of your question about difficulty speaking, some folks just get deeper and it's harder for them to articulate and find language. And I'll be honest, I'm pretty respectful of that. And so I will, ask a question. And and I'll say, tell me what's happening now. In other words, I don't say, what are they telling you? What are you learning? I'll just say, tell me what's happening now, and make it very overall, overarching kind of question that leaves that room. And I also know that there are folks who just are only going to give me snippets. And I know that even though it's just snippets, when they listen to it on the recording, they will remember everything that occurred
Okay.
around and with that. So I don't fret about it anymore. I used to really push and push. And the problem is if you push that hard, you take a person out of a deep state. And that's counterproductive. So I know that these folks are going to, it'll all come back to them when they listen to the recording. So it just ranges. I do have them speak some, and sometimes I deepen folks so that when they do speak, it's their voice tone gets very low and much slower.
Mhm.
And that's actually a sign of depth, which is perfect. And I do like, and so, and that's okay. We just take it at the pace as the session goes and don't worry about it. The purpose of this whole thing is for that to have that personal connection with your team, with your guide, um, in a way that you begin to have it's a remembering. It's not a learning. It's a remembering of a familiarity that you have with these beings because they have been with you. And some folks are familiar with having them within this life now. And that all it is increasing and enhancing that familiarity and that comfort with them. And what they might do ranges. It's infinite. What they may do with you. Um, they may take you to a they may take you to a past life. If they do, it has purpose. It's not for entertainment. It's because they want to show you something about that past life. It may be a piece of a past life that you haven't resolved and it's sticking in your life today. That can happen. And if that happens, then we work through the sticking piece. Other times, they show people past lives that show them that they had a skill in that life that they don't think they have in this life, and that they do, that they can bring it forward and they can be able to do that. And that was certainly true with the session with a client where um, she thought she couldn't be an artist on her own. She had to be in a group to paint. So what they showed her was being a blacksmith, and he worked all by himself. And he was very good at what he did. He was well thought of in the community, et cetera, et cetera. The point being is to show her that she could be proficient and competent on her own, that she could take that skill, and she had it, and that it was a misbelief that she could only paint in community. And I mean, you can tell it was very specific to her and a specific issue that they thought was getting in the way. I would never have known it, and I bet she wouldn't have either. But it was where they chose to go at that moment in that session.
So I think I can see the difference here between just a past life regression where you might go visit that past life, but here it's actually being put in context for a purpose of learning and growth, not just going to visit and see who you were, but actually helping you in this incarnation.
Yes. What I would say to you, and I understand the question, I get it a lot. The past life regression is about a specific past life. I need help with such and such. Or this is an issue for me. I'm afraid of flying. That's an example. Um, so the point is that you stay focused on that life and its context and all the pieces that go with it and the relationships that go with it if they're important. But it's honed in only on that life. So in other words, there's nothing about your guides, there's nothing about the bigger picture. It stays very much with that life alone. Now, if you end up with a past life within this context, it's open. It can be threaded through however it has the most meaning for your spiritual development. And that may be a quick view like, oh, you're a blacksmith and see how competent you are. Or it can be a very complicated one that has all sorts of relational pieces that are coming through in this life that need to be resolved to improve their life today and the relationships with certain folks today as well. So you never know. But I like to use this context because it's because I like to have the guides involved in a very direct way. It isn't that they're not involved in a past life regression, they're there, but they're not actively there interacting with the client. So I think this session in the end is more powerful.
Thank you.
So you really trust that their guides, their spiritual team, is going to guide them to where they need to be and get the information they need in that moment. You're not structured. Like you don't give them suggestions or say, now go here, or ask them to take you to the Akashic records or whatever.
I have one very specific suggestion I give to clients before they come in. Be open.
Okay.
I tell them the best thing you can do is put out to the universe, whatever way they do that, help me to be open. In other words, no, I don't structure it. I want it to be whatever is most meaningful for them. And the more they're able to allow that, the more it unfolds specifically and the best for them. No question about it.
How do you protect your clients from stray influences that may wander in?
Well, they don't wander into my space, I can tell you that. My space is totally protected. I can't imagine how many beings actually protect it. Um, I always use Archangel Michael for my sessions, and I always use him for protection for the client and for anything we do. And also as a guide, I've had sessions where for whatever reason it was too hard for that client in that moment to connect with their spiritual team. And Archangel Michael, I would call on him and he would step in and do the guidance for what needed to occur in that session.
Mm.
So he could be as involved as needed to be, or he could be totally in the background, just providing the protection so that there is no capacity for any kind of energy in any way, shape, or form to interfere.
So people can come in and feel very safe and comfortable then being put under hypnosis or moving
Yes.
into that really deep meditation state.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's a very, very safe space. People, when they come into my office, will report on that because the energy is quite an energy in the space anymore. And yes, because I want the session's going to go much better the more safe somebody feels. So the more comfortable and ease we can make them, the better things are going to unfold and the more they're going to get out of the session itself. So
What
that,
happens?
that's a
Okay,
really important thing for me.
absolutely. And we're so vulnerable. It feels vulnerable to me when I come into a space and I know I'm going to be not really out of control, but certainly in a vulnerable state at that point. So it's nice to know that there's that safety in place.
Well, there's the distorted model out there of the misuse of hypnosis.
Right.
All that stage hypnosis stuff that they have people do. And so people get afraid you're going to have me clucking like a chicken. And so I make it clear to them that their free will is still there and they have acknowledged, they're involved in that. And then I make it clear this is what I do and nothing more than that. Because I have no interest in that sort of thing. And so I reassure them that we're only using hypnosis as a technique to get mind and ego filters to decrease so we can access the non-physical world because it's there, but our mind and ego in a waking state keep it in distance.
How do you respond to people that feel that they don't hypnotize well or aren't capable of being suggestible?
I get that question a lot because people are concerned about it, and I think that's a very understandable concern. What I do, two things. One is I remind people that they do move into an altered state. And I know the two examples I always use are in the shower, running water. And the other one that I use is I say, when you drove to the stop sign near your house yesterday, did you stop? And what they realize, they have no recall of stopping. And we all know that they did. Of course, the point is when we're driving in a very familiar place, we move into an altered state. I use that as an example to show people that they already do it. They just don't label it that way. So I start with that. And then I reassure them that we're going to take it slowly. and that and then I do talk about Archangel Michael, and some folks are familiar with him, and if they're, that's great if they are. If they're not, we introduce them. And I actually ask them if they're okay with letting their mind go sit with Archangel Michael for the session. The session's recorded, so the mind doesn't have to record it. So I ask them if they'll allow their mind to go sit with Archangel Michael, if the mind will allow it as well. And in doing that, that significantly assists with people that are having difficulty because it's the mind usually that's getting in the way. Because the mind's job is to protect. And so it's hard for the mind to back up and relinquish some of that control, but that tends to work fairly well. If there's something that's still in the way, then we go to what's in the way.
Mm.
We stop the session. We don't stop the session. We just don't move forward. We just say, what is the fear that's going behind this? What's going on? And we go and deal with the fear. So to me, it's part and parcel of the work.
How do your clients know that it's actually Archangel Michael that they're interacting with?
A good question. Um, I ask them, if they're visual, I certainly ask them to see what they see because Archangel Michael is very tall and he can hold a sword of light. And so will ask them if they're seeing that. If not, I'll ask them what are they feeling or what are they sensing? And then they'll tell me, well, it feels really warm or I feel a big presence. And I'll ask, how does that feel to you? And of course, because it's an angel full of divine energy and light, they're going to describe that it feels comfortable and easy. So that's the best way I know to help them know that it, in fact, is Archangel Michael that's with them.
Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Has anyone that you've worked with so far had any real frightening experiences or beings that showed up to work with them that were not benevolent, perhaps?
It's never happened.
Okay.
The space is so protected with Archangel Michael, and there's other beings that create in this, I know there are, that's just not possible. I've never had that happen. I've had them be apprehensive about that possibility.
Mhm.
That's different. That's different than it actually occurring. And if they are that apprehensive, then we slow it down. Where did that come from? What is that about? What do we need to do to help you release that fear so we can move forward in the session? So then that we take the time to take care of that. But and I think beyond that, I would also say that your spiritual team and your spiritual guide,
Mm.
they're not going to let that happen either because they're there for your growth and health, not to scare you.
Right.
And they're not going to, I can't imagine them allowing that, to be honest with you.
But I know it can be sometimes a fear that people carry.
When you haven't done a lot of meditation or you haven't done a lot of guided imagery, you hold fears about it. There's just no way not to. And the best way I know is to just reassure folks that I've been there with folks and it's going to be okay. I have a lot of practice with it. And I also assure folks, look, if we encounter something that's blocking or getting in the way, we'll take care of it. It's okay. In other words, there's no failing here. That's not possible. If you're here, you already got it. And that we'll deal with whatever we need to deal with to get you to wherever you need to go today. And if the session is about clearing those pieces that get in the way, then that's the content and the focus of the session.
Well, on a given day, a person might wake up and what situations might they be in where they say, today I need to go make an appointment to see Douglas? What might they be trying to fix?
Usually, Tom, what I get from people is they felt a nudge or a knowing that this is the time. So it's coming through their intuition, or for some folks, I think they hear it telepathically. Um, in terms of why people might come at a certain time, what I get these days is people will say, you know, I think I'm on my path. I think I'm doing what I need to be doing, but I'm not sure. In other words, they want clarity about their path and understanding, well, I think I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'd like to know about my purpose. What's my path and purpose here? So they may have some need to clarify that or understand that better. And that's the role of your spiritual team. That's what they do. So that's an excellent reason to do that. Um, there are some folks that, you know, they're fairly proficient, but they say, you know, I get to a certain point and I can't get past it. And I've tried and I've tried and I've tried and I've done this and I've done that. I mean, they'll have done many things. And that's when will we'll start the session. And I'll just say, let me know if that comes up. And somewhere in the session, that block is going to present itself. And then we deal with it. Because I know that maybe the most important reason they've come for the session. And if that's the case, we'll deal with that. And then if there's space and time, we'll move forward. If not, that may be the session itself. And what I have found that is when that is the case, it's profound because it's something that's been unconsciously blocking them for a very long time. It makes me think of a recent session. And this woman, I mean, she was very proficient. She was a shaman. She was involved with shamanistic rituals, Native American ceremony. I mean, she really had a whole bailiwick. But she says, you know, I get to this point and I don't know. And she started talking and she said, well, and I don't remember exactly the words now, but she's basically said, I don't know, I get kind of stuck here. And I said, stop. Tell me about the stuck here. And it opened the door to a whole unfolding of why she had trouble connecting with interstellars, because she had had an interstellar experience as an interstellar and a life long ago that went poorly. And so we needed most of the session was working on that life and that experience to sort it out and clear it so that she could realize that had nothing to do with her sessions today, that she could trust and that she could now interact with the interstellars. So that was an example of something that was actually pretty neat.
Yeah, that's a serious example. And do people ever get intimidated by what they might find and chicken out at the last minute or do a no-show? How often does that happen?
You know, the truth of it is that now that I don't do traditional psychotherapy, I've never had a no-show. None. I do have people coming and saying, I almost canceled. That's okay. And we'll talk about why did you almost cancel? Well, I'm just not, I don't think I can go under. Whatever. Or there are times when, I think one of the fears is that the spiritual team, the guide, is mad at them. They've done something wrong. They haven't done it right. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they feel like they're going to read them the riot act. I reassure them that I can guarantee them that's not the case because I know that these are all beings of light. They don't even hold those feelings. Um, but that can be a real apprehension that people will hold about that. That's not unusual.
Mhm. Makes sense. Some people say they were born on probation and maybe they don't necessarily want to face that, but I understand.
Yeah, well, we help them understand that that's not true, and because they need to reframe that, because that level of fear is really blocking their spiritual awakening. Because if every step is, oh my God, what have I done wrong? And you're going to tell me, what are you going to do? You're going to block it because who wants to hear bad things about themselves?
Right.
And certainly not to that, not that's way too vulnerable. So if that presents itself and they're here, we're going to deal with that.
I have an image of how this might be symbolically, and let me throw this at you. Picture your typical Indy car race, and they go into a pit stop, and within 2 seconds, they're up on jacks, and they got 10 people working on them. I get that image. Is there anything to that?
Sometimes, you got a spiritual team. And these days, they step forward. I mean, it's funny. I didn't even know we had teams 5 years ago, but I've discovered that's the case. And they step forward. And usually the very first step, not all sessions, but many, is an energy infusion. So that's exactly what you're talking about. And they will literally surround them and begin to infuse them with energy into their body, up through their hands, up to their arms, through their body, into their heart space, wherever they want to focus it. And that will be the very, very first thing they do. And when that happens, I just say, you let me know when they're finished and we will continue.
Do
And
some
that could be
people
from
do some
2 minutes
people go
to
the
an
whole
hour.
session with that, Douglas? Do they?
You know, I understand it. I've wondered that sometimes. But it's never run more than 10 minutes.
Okay.
They'll say, okay, they're done. I say, okay. Because I know that our lives are hard and we're depleted energetically from them. So I know they're going to use this as an opportunity to recharge folks before they move forward with whatever else they want to present to them within the session.
That sounds really fascinating and sounds like pretty much everybody who's on a spiritual path would benefit from doing this. So,
They'll feel it. Yes, my comment is there's timing is everything. And what I would say is yes. And if that's something they're thinking about, just start putting out there, let me know when.
mhm.
Because if they'll do that, they'll go, oh, it's time. I, I knew I needed to contact you and find you or look you up or whatever. Absolutely.
Well, hopefully there will be people that will see this and have that exact response.
Yeah,
I
that's great.
I have another question.
Oh,
Anyone ever come to you for this session who isn't familiar with their guides or their team
Mhm.
and are kind of like, I don't even know if I have guides.
Oh yeah, that's a chunk of folks that come in. They've heard of it, but they can't, and they'll say, I've not ever been able to connect with them myself.
Right.
That will be the most common complaint or concern. Yes, absolutely. And there are times when that continues, and that's where I usually pull in Archangel Michael when that happens. Um, and at other times, then it turns into a non-issue because they're ready, and the team will step forward and they're able to experience them. And
Okay.
if they cannot, then we bring in Archangel Michael and we have him do whatever's necessary that will move them forward in their spiritual awakening that day.
And so they might leave actually having some interaction with a guide.
hmm I always look for an opportunity to bring them in. And so if Michael's working with them and I'll say, is this a time we can bring in your guy? Well, there's somebody standing over here. They just haven't said anything to me. And it's like, oh, well, tell me something about what's standing over. What do you feel from them? What do you experience? I try not to use seeing words because not everybody sees them. And and then I'll say, do you have a sense that this is actually, you're familiar with this being and that they might be your spiritual guide? And they'll go, yeah, I think so. I mean, that will be part of the aha moment for them in that awakening. So absolutely. No, people come in, if they're here and they're ready to explore, I'm ready to work with them on an adventure because that's what it is. You never quite know where it's going to go. Past the guided imagery, and that's very predictable. But beyond that, we just have to see how it unfolds.
fascinating stuff. I've got uh, one open-ended question for you, and I'll let you think on it while I ask you, how could someone get a hold of you? And then here's the open-ended question. What's the one thing you wish we would have asked you?
Let me answer the easy question first. Um, website. Okay. It's easy. It's my name, douglaspratt.com.
Oh, even I can do that.
Yeah. So if you can remember my name, douglaspratt.com, and on there actually is a connection for my send me an email. There's a contact button in there. So which is I'm going to leave it that you can find it there because that's easier to track down than an email itself.
And we'll put that information in the notes for this video.
Yeah, that's great. What questions did I wish you'd asked? I don't think, I think we've covered things fairly well, give people a feel of what it's about. Um, the only thing I don't know, I have an example I didn't use that I really like to use.
Please
Is,
do.
you got the time?
Sure.
Okay. So this happened in the last year. I got contacted by a woman. She was in her 80s. Okay, that's unusual. Usually I don't have clients coming in that old. And she just said, I just think I need to have a session with you. And we did that. So we start the session. And she's telling me she's 82, 83. And basically in her mind, she says, you know, I feel like I'm at the end of my road here in this life. Um, I wouldn't do anything to harm myself, but I don't really want to be here anymore. And I'm just kind of basically waiting for the end to come. And I'm thinking, that's interesting, or why are you here? So anyway, I didn't say that, obviously, I'm thinking that. So I say, let's bring in your guides. And they charged in. I mean, a whole crew charged in. And they were just emphatic with her that you are here. You're here. You have lots to do still. You are nowhere near at the end of your life. And they basically, and I'll just read the quote because I love the quote. This is what they told her. You are here to extend the love of Mary and Jesus and to radiate that love as an expression of the divine. And it's like, oh, I guess she's not right. And, you know, at first I know she was absolutely stunned. I said, what? But, you know, before we got done, she was so excited because it clicked in and this was part of her soul path. It was part of her soul agreement that she had lots left to do. And this whole thing going on with our planet, she's going to have a part in it.
Mhm.
So I thought that was really a profound and fun session.
That's
And I
profound.
get emails from her still. And
Mhm.
yes, I mean, she's on a roll.
Well, at any moment when you think that you're unimportant, you get a message like that, it sure turns everything around, doesn't it?
It makes it very gratifying for sure. No, I love this work.
Oh, terrific. Well, I appreciate your joining us today and your time. And I'm going to wrap this up fairly quickly. And I encourage people to go seek out Douglas at his website, douglaspratt.com. And hopefully you can connect with him very soon and get your own session. So if
Well,
you go ahead, Douglas.
oh, I just wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today. It's been great.
I,
Thank you for joining us.
yeah, I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much for joining us. So with that, if you've enjoyed this session, please give us a like or a subscribe or share it with a friend who you think might benefit from our show or from this session today in particular. And if you have comments, we'd love it if you put them in the comment section down below. And you can also put questions down there for future shows. And then we also have a community page, which I believe now is labeled posts. And you can ask questions there. We'll make sure they get to the right person. And whether that's Lori and me, or whether it's Douglas or any of our guests, we'd love to make that connection for you. And last and certainly not least, if you'd like to get a hold of either Lori or Tom, you can do that at ourspiritualsojourn@gmail.com. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention. See you next time.
Well, that was fun.